Like when I was doing really bad shit in the street, hurting people,
Yeah.
and doing like, I would call on this entity like to protect me. So I had got really accustomed to like hitting this switch where I was giving up my power to this thing. Where I would be like, okay, I knew, like when I had a gun in my hand, when I was gonna go do robbery, when I was gonna go assault, when I was gonna go attack, when I was gonna go step out of my heart.
You just
called upon this. Yes, I was
let
like, okay,
it take over.
Yes, Jason, myself, this natural, loving baby kid.
Step aside.
Step aside.
Yeah.
This what this takes.
Welcome everyone to another episode of Spiritually Challenged. I'm Jay Sherrick. This is actually part 2 of a 2-part episode. In the first part, former gang member Jason Quezada told us how he was incarcerated for a crime that he didn't commit. The experience in the juvenile detention center changed him. And when he got out, ultimately, he joined a gang. Chris Henrikson is the founder of the organization Street Poets, which works with at-risk youth. Our story picks up on the day when Jason is going to meet with Chris to tell him that he's joined a gang and will no longer be working with him. At that meeting, however, something remarkable happens.
Out of my love for Chris and how much Chris had helped me up until that age, like I knew I was about to like embark on this journey where I couldn't see Chris.
Right.
Where I was going, there was no room for what Chris brought.
So you
to the
kind of
table.
went to meet with him just to say goodbye almost.
Yes. Like, yo, man, up to like whatever we've had up to this point, is done.
Yeah.
And I think the energies, whatever I was carrying with me, the wounds I was carrying with me, knew that, and they were like, yo, let's go say bye to this freaking white wizard guy and freaking get back to this darkness over here.
Yeah.
We got that guy out the way. This becomes a lot easier.
So tell us from your point of view, Chris.
I just saw something. We were sitting across from each other at El Cholo restaurant, and I was looking at him, and I watched this sort of snake-like mist move from his belly up into his chest, and then kind of in and out of his neck, and then up into his head. And I just kind of, without even thinking, I was just like, hey, what was that? And pointed at the neck, on the neck, where I'd seen it kind of go in and out of his neck. And Jason said, you can see that?
So I'm fascinated now.
Yeah.
Because I totally can put myself in your shoes.
Yeah.
Right? And like, I've seen this crazy thing.
Yes.
Now, from your shoes, you're like, oh, you can see that?
What were you?
So
what
were you feeling, thinking? What was this thing? What did you see? What did you know already? Like, what was all of that?
Early on in my childhood, from a lot of the trauma that I was experiencing from my father, molested, and just so much crazy stuff. And that's weird to say, but I felt like a part of me go off. You can call it losing your innocence or whatever.
Right.
Goes from something that couldn't handle that at that age.
Yeah.
Being molested, not being believed, beat, all sorts of stuff, and something else comes in. It's weird to say, but it's almost like a big brother. Like, we got this. You know?
So it's like a little part of you leaves and an energy comes in to fill that void, which poses almost as a friend.
Yes, definitely. And you're younger, so I always tell Chris, I felt like this energy, we kind of just grew up together.
Can I just ask you for a second, because you've mentioned it twice now, and without getting into too much graphic detail. So you were molested. It's amazing that you speak about it. You were molested as a child by a babysitter, a female babysitter.
Yes. My mom was really good friends with our neighbor, and her daughter would watch me. She was 16 at the time. And she began molesting me, And
how old were you?
I was like 9, 10, 4th, 5th grade. But I knew that was wrong.
Right.
And I would tell her, she just kind of convinced me that it was right, And then like, when my mom would always tell me like, hey, if someone touches you, something this, you got to tell me, this. And then I didn't like to be with the babysitter. I felt like I should be let outside and play basketball with my friends.
Right.
When I went to tell my mom was like, you're lying. Like, you just don't want to be with the babysitter. Like, don't make stuff up. And I was like, I swear to you, I'm not lying. Like, she's been touching me and this. So when my mom didn't believe me, it fucked me up.
Right.
I was like, all right, man, like, you're my mom.
Yeah.
You're supposed to believe this,
If you don't trust me, who's ever going to trust me?
Yeah, exactly. Like, if you don't believe me, nobody believes me. So then it was like, brought this huge shame. So I stayed with those wounds, man, especially first being molested, second, not being believed by your protector, your mom.
Right.
And I think during that time, it's like when this energy came to be like, yo, man, like, I got you.
Right.
Things are gonna be okay. If your mom don't believe you, I believe you. You know.
So you just started to form a relationship with this energy.
Yes.
And did you have a visual for it?
You know, I always tell people, this is just my belief. Like, I always tell people, I know you ain't right by the look in your eye. I know you ain't right by the look in your eye. You know, I think I judge, this is just me again, I judge a lot of people by the base of just what their eyes tell me.
Yeah.
You know, you got this thing to say the eyes are the windows to the soul. Well, that's real for me, you know. And I began noticing when I was little that my eyes would wink. Like, there was a different shine and gloss in that wasn't fucking normal. You know, that like not everyone else had.
Oh, you could see something when you looked in the mirror.
mirror. Exactly. And, you know, I always knew it was like something else. And I could feel it. And I'd be like, all right, let's go off. You know, like, let's go to school. But sometimes I could feel doing stuff. For instance, like stealing the Eucharist for the Mass.
Right.
You know, like, I broke into the priest's cabinet. Didn't take the wine, but we took the Eucharist. And like little stuff like that, I knew wasn't really me.
Right.
And the more worse situations I got in, that got worse.
So that entity got stronger,
better,
within you.
And grew darker. And the darker I got, it got darker and there were ways to protect me. And it grew fucking teeth.
So like when you were in juvie and everything like that,
sure.
it started to really 100%. Come into its own.
It feeds those kinds of energies, just to give a little perspective on that, is they feed off of fear.
Right.
So an environment like camp, like that Jason was describing, is fear.
Terrifying,
fear with a capital F.
So it's just feeding it.
So that part of him just got.
And you know about that because you do shamanic healings and you've trained with shamanic masters.
Well, I mean, because of what I started to encounter in Jason.
When you said, "Oh, you can see that," what were you picturing? Were you actually picturing the same thing, a serpent, or were you picturing just an energy?
Yeah, I already felt like it had this like serpenty, like reptile thing. I had also already been naturally like big into serpents. I got kicked out of Sunday school for taking a little serpent into my pockets at church, and
you connected with serpents.
Yes, but I did already see that, something like that, like very reptile-y kind of looking thing. And at that time where Chris saw it was a time where I was actually calling upon it. Like I had already got very used to this entity. Like when I was doing really bad shit in the street, hurting people, and doing like, I would call on this entity like to protect me. So I had got very familiar with this entity, which I kind of knew wasn't me, but referred to it as like my gangster self, my evil self, my dark self. And I had got very accustomed to like hitting this switch where I was giving up my power to this thing, where I would be like, okay, I knew, like when I had a gun in my hand, when I was gonna go do robbing, when I was gonna go assault, when I was gonna go attack, when I was gonna go step out of my heart, you just called upon this. Yes, I was
let it take over.
Yes, Jason, myself, this natural, loving baby kid.
Step aside.
Yeah. This what this takes, you know. And it was kind of like that in my teenagers too. Camp was like, yo, step aside. I got this.
Right.
You know, whenever a bully came or something where I knew maybe I couldn't handle it, just like I couldn't handle being molested. The same thing as an adult. If you can't handle this, like I got this.
Right.
You know. So at that time, I was definitely in a lot more like relation with that energy. Just even when I would wake up, I would see it like on my face, just drag, because that's where I was operating from. I was operating from darkness from when I woke up till I went to sleep. And it was actually a big relief when Chris saw it. I was like, because I knew Chris was like, he could see it's someone that I found safety in, someone I trusted, someone that I cared for, could see what I was carrying too. It was like,
because that gave you hope that maybe you could separate from it, or what was the relief?
I don't even know separated, but what I really think is that we both found relief. Both the entity and both me, like, found relief in seeing, like, finally someone could see us.
Yeah. Well, I wonder if that's what it is. It's just like there's an innate need to be seen.
But it suggests to me, though, that even on some level, this energy, which is so fear-based and is so kind of twisted and dark, it's looking for a way out of the pain too. 100%. You know, whatever that is. You know,
you're right on about that, and it wanted to be seen. Mm-hmm. It wanted to talk to me.
It wanted a way out.
It might not have articulated it that way because it was scared of the unknown and like what change would look like, but I think it saw in me like some glimmer of hope, and also it knew on some level it was out of bounds in Jason. It knew it was not. It was renting space, not
right.
And it had gotten kind of comfortable. But the more that Jason was doing things that brought him into the light, the less comfortable being in Jason was for this thing.
So now Chris has seen this part of you that no one really saw or understood before, right?
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about your journey now. Now, how did is this thing still part of you?
No.
Okay. So eventually.
Maybe.
Okay, I gotta go.
Someone called. Looking for me.
Well, so in other words, at some point you parted ways with this aspect, this energy. Do you consider it an aspect of yourself, or do you consider it really another kind of soul, another entity that was...
I really do consider it a separate thing.
A separate entity.
A separate whole entity, just on its own, completely different, you know. And I think, for sure, you can at times think it's you and believe it's you, but it really is something
entirely different. So
different.
tell us just about your journey. Now that someone has seen it, how did that lead? What were the big steps towards separating from that?
I think, you know, like I said, it brought big relief to myself, and I think the entity that we could be seen.
Right.
And keep in mind, also in the culture I was in, I could see like all my homies in the gang. I could see their energy, and it was just fucking wild because I had been seeing these entities for a long time and these people around me.
So you could see similar in your homies.
Yes.
You could see them, and you could see similar energies that had hooked up with them.
100%.
One of the ways of looking at a gang is that it's held together by these entities, these fear-based energies. Back in the day, we would talk about this idea of if you could destigmatize, for example, the childhood sexual abuse as a wound and allow all the
people to talk about
it and heal that wound, the ripple effect of that through gangs would be seismic, because there's so many gang members that have been wounded in that way,
sexually wounded,
but there's shame around that wound, and especially in that culture, and so it keeps people stuck.
Let me ask a question. The fact that you were molested by a woman, did that make it easier to kind of open up, or it's shame is shame regardless?
I think for sure it made it a little bit easier, especially like in like Latino culture.
Right.
It was kind of like, get over it. It wasn't a man.
Yeah.
But I think at that age, man, like you're just your innocence.
Yeah.
You're just fucking man or woman, nothing.
I'm not saying it isn't. Yeah,
no,
absolutely
for sure.
devastating. But
it did make it easier to talk about it. But it was a trip that almost all my homies, gangs, had been molested. You know,
would they come clean with you about that?
Yeah, because like there comes a day and day, man, when you're doing damage and you're doing out there and you're just fucking partying and being destructive, the sun comes down, man. And at one point, just like Chris saw me, almost every one of my homeboy would let me see them for whatever they saw that I could see them, or just to like breathe, because it's only your true self only comes out for maybe an hour, 30 minutes. You know, those guys would breathe, and maybe when they were coming off withdrawals. Right. Or coming down, or something serious that happened, someone had died, their moms, their parents, and they would tell me, and I'd be like, damn. And I realized that was a real common wound in gangsters, you know, sexual assault, like, especially as a kid. And that's why there's like a no tolerance for that in prison. When you ask me,
is that why? Because there's a real code in prisons
of because
like, those people
most of those kids are from childhood wounds who had either been molested by their uncles, their dads, drunk people. Very common, and like Chris said, it comes with a deep shame.
Yeah.
I think for me, it was a little easier to speak about it. But when I realized, I'm like, damn, that wound, when you're a kid and you hold on to it, like I said, that wound just grows teeth and teeth and teeth, and just eventually has a bite.
And you're saying, like, boy, if society could destigmatize that, and if that could come out of the closet, all these energies that have clung onto these people, that they're hiding, that they're living in fear and pain, you know, could get released, it would have such a profound impact.
Well, it's interesting. In the time that I've known Jason, that has started to happen. Like, there are so many more people talking about those wounds now than in our culture, and so many more men speaking about it. And by the way, the gang issue in Los Angeles is is significantly reduced from the days that Jason was growing up and when I started doing the work with Street Poets. I mean, there are many fewer gang members in Los Angeles.
Wow.
It's still an issue, but it's not what it was.
Right.
I think one of the factors is that.
So you're in this gang. You're seeing all your homies in the gang, and you have the eyes to see it because you know it yourself. You're seeing these negative energies have really latched on to each and every one of them.
100%.
Yeah.
And it was really crazy to see, like, just moments when they were with their kids or being a father, literally, like, for just the windows 2-3 hours, they're a dad, and they're giving their kids the best, the dad they wanted to be. But then, like, you leave there and it's like, saddle up. Like, just they went from being a loving, caring dad who just had a birthday party, did it, and then to being a stone cold killer.
It's like that energy said, okay, I'll just be
it was like
quiet for now, and then boom, I'm back.
You had your time with your family, you had your little good time, we're back in business.
So how did you let go of your energy, this thing that was, had leached onto you?
I think a couple things happened. I think first, like, once it's been seen, like, once, when we found this, like Chris said, it became a little bit more uncomfortable for each other in this body.
The two of you, the entity and you.
Yes. And then I think myself, a lot of things started to happen. By then I had already gone to adult jail. County, I had done, like, some pretty
serious places,
where I'd seen serious stuff. And I was like, okay, for sure, only thing that awaits me is death.
Right.
Or prison.
So when you say serious stuff in prison, you've seen what kind of shit?
Stabbings. I mean, I had a lot of people that I knew die. I've been shot twice myself.
You'd been shot twice?
Yeah. So then I was like, oh, this shit is real. Like,
you were shot on the street or in prison?
On the street.
Yeah, okay.
On the street.
Yeah.
I've been shot on the shoulder and the buttocks.
Uh-huh.
And I just knew shit was getting real. Where I was stepping in was these moments were going to be for life. I was either going to be the next in the coffin, or I was going to be what every kind of kid aspires to be, a shot caller in jail, and that's the only life that really awaits you there.
It's one or the other. Either you're dead or you're in jail and you're a shot caller or something.
If you want to follow that career path, you would say
that's the height of it. Is you have this quote unquote safety of being in jail and you're calling the shots from jail.
Yes,
I see.
Yes.
So when shit is getting real, as you say, what's going on with you and this entity?
If stuff is dark, if there's issues, if there's drama, if there's turbulence, if there's fear, it gets to stay, right? Because that's the parts of you that you haven't learned to handle,
right?
That you haven't learned to deal with yourself.
Entity gets to stay if anytime you plug into that kind of energy.
Exactly, and it was very much true. Whenever I was met with fear or this, I realized that I stepped back and that entity would take place,
right?
So it wasn't until I became not so much more aware of those things, but I began to want to live. Like, literally, I began to find reasons to want to live. I was having children. I had just had my first son, and having lost my dad early, being a dad was a big thing for me. Like, I just couldn't wait to be a dad.
Yeah.
And I remember seeing my son be born. I was 19 years old. Turning 20, and I just was just like crying. Yeah. He was born the same day my dad was.
Oh, wow.
No. Same day.
No.
And I just remember was like, whoa, this little baby. And I was just like, dang.
What did you name him?
Jason. Jason Elijah Quezada. And I just remember holding this baby and this pure innocence, like, just looking back at you. And I was like, man, this baby's survival is based on me. Like, just looking at this and making a promise to that kid, like, yo, I'm going to do everything I got to do so that you have a dad, so I stay in your life, and that you just grow up good. And I remember just crying.
So that's so beautiful. So what's happening is you're seeing these two paths very clearly. You're seeing, the path of getting shot and all these people dying, and you're seeing this experience of having had your son and this feeling of love and feeling responsible and wanting to almost make good on what your dad didn't do for you. And was it because those two paths became so clear? Is that what gave you the opportunity? Well, how did you make it and so many people don't make it?
Chris Henrikson.
How did it sounds like what you're saying is you chose life, and when you chose life, this energy that was in you no longer had a place.
Yeah, chose life in the face of death.
Yeah.
You know, that's a big saying that street poets choose life in the face of death. And I think this is weird, man. Just the universe throughout my entire life has always thrown me fucking lifelines. I don't know why.
That's Chris said that earlier. Yeah.
I don't. You just like seriously throughout my whole life.
It actually sounds like that.
The universe has sent me, and I
I
believe that I'm meant to be here right now in this moment, but just to be alive, because the universe has always sent me a lifeline, like just a care package.
Yeah.
In my darkest times and my best times, and you know, Chris was doing this work, which had in turn provided a door for me, for the entities, for the things I was carrying to walk through. There was no way you can walk with both, like the entity. It reaches
one or the other,
and that limit was either death or jail.
Right.
So it wasn't until we began to address some of the wounds and issues that I was like, okay, like there is light, there's love, and I started to feel that light and love in my heart again. And I was like, this life is worth living. Like I don't want to die. I don't want to be in prison. I want to see my kids grow. I want to be someone, you know. I had dreams of always finishing college. I wanted to do things with my life. But then it came with the real risk of you don't just walk up and leave a gang.
Yeah.
You know, you don't just. I had already made other serious decisions and other serious commitments that weren't so easy to get out of. And even then, God, the creator was still throwing me lifelines, you know. I think the more me and Chris got into this work, and I started trusting Chris with the healing work, with the shamanic work, I just felt better every time.
So at some point, you had to separate from the gang.
Yes.
How do you do that? Because people don't do that very easily, right?
No, not at all. Usually they say like you either
die or you stay in the gang.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's definitely was the most preferred for my gangs.
Right.
And you know, it was slowly by slowly when you start to let light and love come back into your body, it can't be in the same places you were in. It just can't.
Right.
Like
you don't fit in the
you
gang
don't fit
anymore.
in. Plus, the same entities that you were seeing start looking back at you and say, something's wrong with this motherfucker. He been going somewhere.
Right.
He been getting work done.
Right.
He been getting light. He been getting love from somewhere. He ain't been kicking it.
And then how does the gang react to that?
Aggressive. How you think when you're losing something you don't want to lose?
Right.
When they're taking something, it totally turns up, man. I almost lost my life. I got a bottle broken over my head. I showed up one day to Street Poets with the freaking hole in my head, just like literally with the hole in my head.
So tell me the story. How did that happen? Like,
you know, some of my friends just call me like, yo, where you been at? You been avoiding? So being part of a gang literally is like a job. Like you check in. You're in your neighborhood every day.
Right.
There's duties, patrolling. There's stuff you got to do. Like you have to be what's called an active gang member. You know, like a active member at a country club. I don't know, but just you have to be.
It's just like that. Yeah.
Like, you know, play tennis. You gotta pay your dues. You know, and so you're doing this stuff, and
so they're noticing that you're not around.
Exactly. Where's my nickname used to be Bugsy, and they're like, yo, where's Bugsy? Yeah. Where's he at? You know, where you haven't seen him. You're not doing this. You're not here. You're not engaging here. You know, they could feel it, man. Like you can just say you can feel a warm person when you first meet them, or just you can meet someone like this. It gives me a little bit of fun vibes. You know, they can feel it too. So they're just like, oh, he feels a little warmer. He doesn't feel like the coldness that he usually is, and that is
threatening to them.
Yeah. Because it's like you know, well, what's going on with him? You know, or he's leaving us, you know, kind of thing. I was just like, yo, man, I'm just doing my thing. Usually doing my thing is like not wanting to be part of the gang, you know, just either working a normal job or being a father. Anything that's good, basically, is
doing my thing. And they don't like that.
And it doesn't fit with the program.
And so what happened?
We just started fighting. Next, you know, all my homies jumped out and they kicked me. They hit me with a big old huge Jose Cuervo bottle over my head. Wow. Didn't break.
Didn't break?
No. Just
wow.
And twice. And luckily the store owner who knew me since a child was like, hey, come out and save my life.
Do you think their intention was to kill you in there?
Maybe not kill me, but definitely give me the message like, get your shit together. You got duties in the game.
Right.
Like, this is your first priority is the game. Before your family, before your kids, before anything, it's the game.
And so the store owner comes out and saves them. Saves you.
All the cops comes out and, you know, they let me go.
So is that the turning point down, or do you go back to the game?
It wasn't the exact turning point, But it was definitely a point in my eyes where like, yo, man, like, I just went to jail for you motherfuckers. Like, I've been shot at with you guys. We've done some real deep shit. And now you're going to turn your backs on me because I want to be a dad.
Right.
Because I want to be a better person. You know, maybe look for a job. And it was weird because I'd been on the other end of that. I had beaten up and hurt people from my gang for wanting to be good dads. For wanting to be... step out, for wanting to be.
And did those people get out or didn't get out?
They moved away.
Oh,
you know what I mean? So you either got to move the hell far away, or no,
right.
No gang member from LA is gonna go follow you to Utah, you know, or wherever else you go.
Yeah.
So a lot of them moved away. It was a lot harder for me because my family's based in the neighborhood I grew up in. My mom, the church, everyone was like, so it was a lot harder for me to just get up and leave.
Right.
I just kind of started doing the right thing, and I was like, you know, it came to a point where I was like, fuck it, if I'm gonna die for being a good dad or being a good person, let it be. During the time when I was in my darker days, I did a lot of stuff for my older homies, a lot of favors, a lot of their biddings, you know, as usually goes from the line that they gave the orders, I followed them. I was a good soldier.
Right.
I kind of got like a pass. You know, one of
you'd build up goodwill by doing their bidding.
Yes. And I wasn't fully out of the gang yet, you know, I was still around, and I was still providing, you know, pitching in for things and guns and providing guys with weed and still doing like the minimal things to be what was kind of required of you to be a part of a gang.
Yeah.
But I was definitely on my way out. I was definitely seeing life in a different way. My heart was returning back to me. I was seeing a whole different new version of myself, especially through the work I was doing with Chris. Every time I left, I had felt like a piece of the jigsaw puzzle that was me had been put back in.
Yeah.
You know,
and every piece that comes back of you makes it harder for that entity to be there.
Of course, you know,
and also makes him not fit. Not only does he not fit in when he's with back with the homies, but the homies feel like he doesn't fit in.
Right.
And actually, they stopped seeing him. One of the interesting things that I remember from that is you started to become kind of invisible to them. It's like you're operating on a different wavelength and they can't even see it. And I just mean in the sense of like those. It's the gang. Remember the things that hold the gang together are these energies that we're talking about, and have really are the shot callers within most gang members, and they're trained to respond to other fear-based energies. So whether it's a gang unit cop who's carrying energy like that, when that dude comes on the block, they're gonna notice him. When someone walks down the block, they're gonna know who's the guy who's carrying a gun and like is a threat and who's not. It's entirely threat-based kind of way of looking at the world. But when Jason was clearing that stuff out, it was like he wasn't in that matrix anymore. Right. I remember there was one time where you were in a store and a bunch of the homies came in and they didn't even see you. They literally was standing in line behind you.
That's such an incredible story. That just speaks to like how powerful these vibrations are.
There was so many times too, like I would walk right past people and that knew me and that didn't see me, and just because once again I wasn't giving off that energy. That was a big, huge, like, turning point for me when I started to get a lot clearer and make more room in myself and started to feel a lot more like myself again.
And it's just really just about the choices you're making of moving towards these lighter, more loving energies, these more loving aspects of your world. It's shifting the energy of who you are, and now you just literally don't fit in that world anymore, and they can't even see you in some sense.
It becomes so uncomfortable, man, when you get to that space, because now your homies are like, what's up? They're like, can't even trust you. Like, are you snitching?
Right.
Are you okay? Because now you're like this whole different thing, and now you're a threat to them.
So how do you really just finally cut the cord?
You know, I still live in my family still come to that neighborhood really, and
so you're still walking some sort of balance.
Yes, the thing is that I just became so much more rooted in myself and in my love and what I believed in, that almost what I would like to say, like a piece of them was like, yo man, you made it. Like the deepest parts of themselves
wish they were
back,
the humanity in them.
And then I got started to get a lot of that stuff, like you made it. You did it with I was doing construction and like all my homies were starting to ask me for jobs, knowing they couldn't keep a job for more than a week. And just you became to do, because at the end of the day, almost every gangster I met has this dream or illusion that after they've lived a gangster life, they get to walk off into the sunset. Like this big homie dream, you know, that. And some do, and most don't. Though.
Most don't, yeah.
But that's the dream. That, you know, once you've lived the gangster life, you get to hang out and with the lowrider car and just maybe a boat and just drift off and have this
retire that life. And,
work for the city or something and just retire that life away. And when someone starts to live that, it's kind of like, oh, that one or two dudes made it in the hood.
Yeah, at first they might try and beat you down and but then when you actually are doing it, it maybe you've become kind of the model, the hero for them.
Yes, and people start to see you differently, and they're like, oh man, you made it. And you know, like there's still half my neighborhood who hates me. You know, there's still other dudes who they saw me, especially dudes like from my era. That
they resent the fact
they resent
that you got
like, yo, you got out, I didn't. So I know, and it's not so much now before, but there was times in the past where I would see them, and it was like, man, like I know this is a stand where I'm gonna have to fight.
So even when you're out, you might have to
fight. For sure, because once again, like, you know, you see someone and I know for them it's like, why him and not me kind of thing. Why him and not me, or just so upset. And what the entities they're carrying are like, yo, fuck him. He was doing what I was doing the same thing, if not worse. And now he's over there living his life.
Do you worry about your well-being, your safety? I mean, you're a dad, or do you think
you know what? Honestly, not so much now. There was a time where I for sure did. I wouldn't even be in my neighborhood. I would like travel lately, go to my aunt's house, and just use my Harry Potter cloak, just and run. You know. Yeah. Not so much. A lot of things have happened. You know, Chris mentioned earlier, like gangs have drastically died down in Los Angeles. The grip of that has actually changed out. Where I grew up and got hit with a huge RICO Act. USC just took over everything. That means it's nice now. They got nice coffee shops, sushi spots.
So it's gotten
gentrification
better.
Came over, and I think it hugely changed the wave there of the gang culture in the neighborhood I grew up in.
The other thing I would say is, and I think this is important to say, Jason has a lot of love for his homeboys. And I think that's the approach, the sort of shamanic approach also to this work, is to understand that, like, the difference between, for example, Christian kind of casting out of demons approach to exorcism is that it's that there's enormous judgment placed on the entity. The shamanic and more indigenous approach to it is that judgment does not exist in the same way. It's just an understanding of, like, you know, you don't blame a snake for acting like a snake. If you step on it, it bites you. You know, like you don't judge it. And so the work of helping someone heal from that is just separating things from that have maybe run their course with each other. Right. You know, some of his homeboys might still need that snake in them to live the life that they're in, you know, and to navigate the world. And there's no judgment on that. Right. You know, there's no, and I think Jason has a lot of love for his homies because he sees them in the same way I saw him. Right. Yeah, and everybody, including, by the way, these entities, wants to be loved. Yeah, the entities don't trust love, but it still feels good. It feels good. Wants the same thing. The light feels 100%. Good when it hits you. You know, yes. Even if it scares you, it still feels good. You know,
you're right on with that. I think, like, you know, now the relationship I have to my homeboys is that of love. You know, with boundaries. You know, I'm not going to do certain things. I would never get in a car with you knowing you have a gun. I'm not going to go this. But, yo, bro, if you want to maybe see where your kid could go play baseball, you see a program for your kids or scholarships, just things that they can ask me for, or, you know, who's hiring, or if, you know, hey, can my son go work with you for the summer for construction so he could learn a little bit yeah, come on. So things like that. And I think also me having walked there and been in there, the compassion, the empathy that it gives me, like, yo, man, I've been there, man. I know what that's like. Yeah. Like, not to see a way out, to be struggling, allows me to connect with them different now than it ever has, where it was, like, before of a fear of, like, getting my ass kicked or something, or maybe even getting hurt now. It's just like, nah, bro, what's up with you? How you doing? Where are you at? Like, I love how Chris met me, man. I've had a really great model of someone to, like, not really judge me for where I've been or where I've walked, but just to meet me where I needed to be met at. And I think that's how I walk in this world.
Yeah.
Especially my homies, like I see them for where they're at, man. You know, and like Chris said, some of them are still in that life and they walk, and even those guys just kind of like give me the thumbs up and move because we're not on the same kind of wavelength. But then you got the guys that are trying to get out, want to improve, maybe want to stop doing drugs, want to stop going to jail, and you know, they'll hit you up and talk to you and just question how you live, and just it becomes a way of they feel seen as well, you know, and not in a non-judgmental way.
Well, you're bringing light into their lives, even though they can't. It would sound like can't handle that much of it or move in that direction so much right now, but you to them are bringing hope and light. It seems to me. I mean, the way you describe it,
just by modeling that, you know, and doing different. I think, especially just like kids with. In that kind of culture, it's about what you do, like how you live, how you walk, showing. Yeah. And I think just by showing that you're doing different, showing that also is funny, you know. We had mentioned it, but that also becomes like your protection. You know what I mean? Like walking the right way, walking righteously, because the gangster knows if you're half stepping. Right. Like from that life, the energies, the entities don't know if you're bullshitting.
Right.
And if you are, they're gonna pounce on your ass.
Right.
Yeah. They're gonna make you pay for walking that. Half, and that happened to me too. Yeah. You know, because you're not fully in. They know when you're like in it and not in it. Yeah. You're gonna pay for that. So I was told, like, I learned that lesson the hard way. So now I just you gotta walk the walk, talk. You know, and really be, and that kind of becomes like a sort of like a love protection, man. Like a protection where people can't help but to respect it and can't help but to ask for help if they need it. You know. Just like, I mean, Christians always come with so much love in a way that, like, I just knew that it was a person that I could approach and always come and ask for some type of help or guidance and I wasn't going to be judged. He would tell me, like, yo, he would have the answer or he'd be like, we could find the answer together. Right. You know, and I think that's always been super, super amazing for me, man.
Was there ever a moment where you felt that entity leave? Like, was there a moment, or was it just sort of a gradual thing where you were like, oh, wow, I don't feel this thing anymore?
All right. A person like me, we call a collector. And we had a couple entities, you know.
Oh, there you
more than a couple.
Collector of many. Those are the layers of the onion that you had.
Jason, remember he said he absorbs things?
Yes.
He absorbs things. So when he's in a light-filled place,
he absorbs light.
The light comes in from all angles, and when he's in a dark place, he absorbs that.
A collector, I like that.
And he's learned obviously through the years how to create a boundary and that so he's not quite as absorbent. He can be more selective.
So you've let a lot of things go, and you've had the experience of letting them
go. A lot. And you know, it's funny because there will be times where I left. You know, the healing or the session, and I'm like, yeah, Chris, we did it, man. Yeah. Oh, Chris, we're healed. I feel it. Oh, man, Chris, I feel like I can walk on water. Like, there was times I'd be like, we're fun. And he's like, Chris, no. It's just because a lot of things people understand, like, people think healing is just a straight line. Yeah. Like, when it's not. It's just fucking, at least for me, layers up the road. You know, I took the long way here, you know.
I think everyone. And I think there is no quick way.
You know, you would find that, you know, you do one thing and then there's just a huge surprise waiting for you back there, and that's how it was for me. Yeah. So I think there was a couple times, you know, and I think during ceremonies, certain rituals, you know, I've been buried we did a West African ritual. I was buried in the earth. I felt an entity like just leave me, literally be pulled out of me by the earth, like just, and that was really deep for me because I literally like I could feel it in my being, but also like in my soul, and even like the space within me, like kept just release, and it's like, oh yeah, now we have like this whole part right here that's empty, and like yourself, you know,
room to breathe.
There was another time when I was in a room with Chris and we're doing some crystal work, and the crystal got like ice cold.
Oh wow!
Like whoo, like hot ice, like whoosh, and I was like, oh damn, and I could feel it. And it was weird because it would go there, and then I was like, feel it come in, like, it was like, yes, no, and I was like having to like talk your kid to like the first day of school, like, you're gonna be okay, you're gonna be fine.
You're telling the entity to leave. You can go, you'll be fine.
Like, I promise you, like you need this and I need this, we're gonna be fine. Like, just promise.
And it worked.
Just gonna, and it worked. And I think because, like you said, at the end of the day, we're all looking for love. We're all looking for the same thing, to be welcomed. And so was this entity. So when I finally convinced, like, yo, man, you're good. We're good. And it was like, I literally, it was insane. But you could feel it, not only on the physical, but like on the spiritual level. Like something had left you. You know, and it was in that crystal. And I remember I was like, man, that shit is cool. Like, it's crazy. And I remember Chris going like, and I remember, like,
crystal got really cold.
Yeah, Chris even was like,
Yeah.
I think every single time you feel it. I think every single time, whether it's a relief or you feel something new, you definitely feel it. It just depends on where you've walked in this world, I think, where you've been, how fucked up you are, I guess you would say. But you do know, at least for me, you kind of know when your heart's been put back into place. When you're like, okay, this is me. This is me, Jason Quezada, hurt boy, adult, father, son, construction, all of me together making the decisions. This is me moving forward as a man in the world, you know, not being hijacked by entities on certain situations. No. Like, now I feel like I approach everything as me, Jason Quezada, whether it be the loss of a friend, whether it be losing a job, whether it be losing work, whether it be something with my kids. I approach it as myself. And I don't always have the answers now, but I have what I think is like the tools to find the answers. You know?
Okay, so here's my last question. I have one more question. When you look back at that kid who was a freshman at Venice High School and he threw the ditch party, would you say, if you could go back in time, would you say don't throw that ditch party? Or what's your relationship to this incredible journey that you've been on? And it's obviously the journey's not over, but, you know, like, how do you relate to that, let's say, mistake that you made and this incredible journey? Is there a part of you that goes, gee, I wish I had just stayed at that, you know, the Catholic high school and just been a good boy?
I think about that question once a week. And I think we all could say we had a time machine, go back and do things different.
You would go back and do it different.
100%.
Yeah.
Like, who wants to go through a life of pain?
Yeah.
Who wants to go to jail? Who wants to be shot? Who wants to hurt? For me, too, you know, we haven't spoke about this much, but I've hurt people.
Yeah.
You know, these hands, these eyes, this mouth have hurt people. Would I go back and not hurt people? Hell yeah. Would I go back and make sure that other people are whole, you know, and not ever have to feel the wrath of my shit? The hell yeah, I would.
Yeah.
Even saying all that, I would go back. I'm still grateful for the way it played out. Through all the pain and all the life lessons learned, because we wouldn't be here having this conversation.
Yes.
You know, and even from all this pain, I've seen beauty come out. I've helped other people. I've helped other people understand where they're at in their lives, and I feel like I wouldn't be able to do that if I didn't walk through the fire, if I didn't walk to those places. You know, I would look back and I was like, what would I say to that 14-year-old kid?
Yeah.
Right? That Jason Quezada, fresh kicked out of private high school and public school. And I was telling Chris, I would say one thing, for sure, stay weird. You know, stay in that weirdness, in that goofiness, in that, you know, the kid who likes freaking Harry Potter and likes all this weird stuff, and that's trying to change all that to fit in, you know. And that's definitely was me. Right. I was looking for acceptance. I was looking of my peers, of my family. So I would say, like, just stay weird, you know, like, love yourself, man. Know that all the stuff you might be embarrassed about is stuff that's going to give you strength later on in life.
You said you would give him a hug.
I would start by giving him a big ass hug. I'm a hugger, you know. Study shows that hugs over 6 seconds change a person's life.
Is that true? Yeah.
I would give myself a huge hug and let him know, like, everything's okay. You know, I think at that age, we're really just looking to hear that.
Yeah.
I'm still in really good relationships with all my friends from private school, with a good group of them. And some of them are more fucked up than me.
Yeah.
You know, without ever been in gangs and gone to jail and all this. Yeah. So I'm just like, you know, I don't know. I mean, maybe it could have been, not to say that I don't have bad days or I don't have sad days and shit like everyone else. But I find like I'm living a life with purpose, and I feel happy. I feel like I have meaningful relationships in my life. I feel that I'm able to connect to people from the heart now because I've been through where I've been, you know. I feel like naturally we connect from this other place. before we know it's safe enough for us to connect from the heart. I feel like naturally I just come from here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, this is where I come. You know, if you could meet me there, cool. But if you can't, that's cool too. Yeah. And I think that comes from this long, windy, turbulent journey. You know, so yeah, if I could go back and change and stop myself from harming myself and other people in this world, for sure, man, I definitely would. But am I okay with the way life turned out? Yeah. I have 2 beautiful kids, you know, one's about to be a junior, one's about to be a senior.
Wow, congratulations.
You know,
yeah.
Thank you. You know, my construction has been really good for me, and it allows me to work physically, get stuff out, and also to provide jobs to my community and people I know. And so yeah, I mean, I think life turned out pretty well for me.
I think so too.
Yeah, I think so too.
I just want to say too, and this as someone who's witnessed Jason's journey all along, is that that's all true. And there are things that Jason is going to carry through this lifetime that are real burdens that he spoke to briefly about, you know, the ways as he's hurt people. And I don't mean to I'm not trying to drag this, but I think it's important for you, you know, and you acknowledged it, but that's part of. There's no magic wand that can change that.
Go away,
that's part of that's 100%. Part of the journey that you're on.
Don't sugarcoat it, right?
For sure.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, Chris always talks about like the wounded healer. You know, like even though you're out and you know you're doing great things and maybe trying to be of service and healing to other people, like we still carry these wounds. You know that are not things that. Go away, you know, that other people might still be in pain, you know, and I try to live my life in service of those things. You know, I know I can't take back some things I've done, but could maybe I help prevent another kid from walking that route? Could I maybe help another kid or an adult from putting down a gun? Not that you could ever make these things right, but I think that's the way.
That's all you can do at this point. Yeah.
Exactly, live in recognition that. You would never do the first, that you would never do those things again, but that also that you're in service to those wounds.
Yeah. Jason, it's been so incredible having you here on the show. This is so exactly why I wanted to do a podcast, just to get into this and hear these kinds of messages from people like you. And it's just, isn't it just incredible? And Chris, thank you so much again for being with us, because you know, you introduce this world to us in these stories, and I want to come back at some point and hear more about the very colorful experiences, psychedelic experiences you guys have journeyed through. But thank you so much. Really, it means the world to me to have you here.
Thank you guys for having us here, man.
Yeah, always fun.
If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe to Spiritually Challenged on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts.